Aung San Suu Kyi has launched Myanmar's defense at the International Court of Justice, where the country has been accused of committing genocide against its Rohingya Muslim minority. She's told the court the army may have used disproportionate force as it responded to an attack by Rohingya militants in 2017. But she's also argued there's no proof the army was trying to wipe out the community.
Please bear in mind this complex situation and the challenge to sovereignty and security in our country when you are assessing the intent of those who attempted to deal with the rebellion. Surely, under the circumstances, genocidal intent cannot be the only hypothesis.
It's the second day of hearings at the United Nations top court. The case, launched by Gambia, centers on the 2017 military crackdown in which thousands of people in Rakhine State were killed.
It led to the exodus of more than 700,000 Rohingyas to neighboring Bangladesh. UN investigators have previously concluded that Myanmar's treatment of the Rohingya amounted to genocide.
Nina Maria Potts is covering the hearing for us from Europe, while Mei Wong has reaction in Yangon. Nina, we'll come to you first. And tell us what Aung San Suu Kyi's main message was at the ICJ.
Well, Myanmar's civilian and de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi was forensic in her approach this morning at The Hague. There were protesters, but mainly supporters of Aung San Suu Kyi outside the court who believe that she is there to defend Myanmar's international reputation and domestic sovereignty when it comes to the judicial process. Her main message was to completely overturn and question the very basis of Gambia's case against Myanmar. And she questioned how a country like Myanmar, which is undertaking its own judicial process, could be accused of having a genocidal intent. And I think that was really key. She said that there had been military sentences against individuals who had committed crimes against civilians, and in some cases, just as in other countries, those sentences had sometimes been overturned or cut short, and people had even been pardoned. She said that that had disappointed many in Myanmar, and still she insisted, if a country is intent on going through its own judicial process of accountability, how can it be accused of genocide? And Myanmar is absolutely intent on bringing perpetrators to justice.
Regrettably, the Gambia has placed before the court an incomplete and misleading factual picture of the situation in Rakhine State in Myanmar. Yet, it is of the utmost importance that the court assess the situation obtaining on the ground in Rakhine dispassionately and accurately. The situation in Rakhine is complex and not easy to fathom.
So it was a robust defense of Myanmar that we heard from Aung San Suu Kyi earlier today. She acknowledged that there had been times when perhaps individual members of the military had been overzealous in their approach, and she doesn't deny that crimes were committed. However, she insists that Myanmar must be allowed to conduct its own investigations and reach its own conclusions and not be rushed by the international community.
Nina, Gambia, we know, is asking the top court to impose provisional measures on Myanmar. Do we know what sort of measures these are?
Well, Gambia has presented a 46-page case against Myanmar, including very detailed testimony from eyewitnesses on the ground and really grim details of grim crimes against humanity. We know that the provisional measures basically involve getting Myanmar to, in a public way and in a defensible way and in a proven way, to show that it is taking immediate action to stop the damage and to prove that it is stopping what Gambia claims is irreparable harm to the Rohingya population. We also know that Gambia is potentially seeking compensation for victims and would like to enforce, land reclamation and all sorts of other issues that would address really restoring dignity to the Rohingya people. Of course, Aung San Suu Kyi claims that there are programs underway currently in Myanmar to protect social harmony and to close IDP camps. She says Myanmar has an IDP camp closure strategy in place, and that should be evidence enough that Myanmar has the best intentions.
All right, thanks for that. Nina Maria Potts in Brussels. So let's bring in May Wong, and she is in Myanmar, in Yangon specifically. May, how different was Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi's statement compared to what the government has been saying so far?
You must understand that this is a very serious case and an extremely important platform for her, and so the words in her speech for about half an hour were extremely carefully chosen. But I must tell you honestly that there were so many familiar incidents that she brought up time and again throughout the past 2 years, trying to defend what the government has done, trying to defend what the military has done over in Rakhine State. One example, you just heard her say earlier, misleading and incomplete information have been used, and that's the reason why people are coming up with all these allegations of genocide in the country. In addition to that, she also talked about how the military themselves, the government, is actually taking actions, prosecuting the perpetrators for some of the actions that were allegedly committed in terms of atrocities against the Rohingyas over in Rakhine State. But you and I know that many of the perpetrators were let off very easily before they even completed their full jail sentence that they were initially given. And also many of the perpetrators, particularly on the high level, they have really not been touched. And yet another final point also, we've just heard as well, the fact that Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi says the government has been doing a lot, introducing social cohesion projects and programs, particularly in Rakhine State, making sure that all the children in Rakhine State, regardless of ethnic, regardless of religions, they all have access to education, to healthcare, to, of course, access to livelihoods. But again, here, the international community as well as the international non-government organizations beg to differ, and we have seen a flurry of social media comments rejecting those comments by Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi, saying that that is absolutely not true. At this stage, Rakhine is still facing a lot of segregation, discrimination, particularly between the Rakhine people as well as the Rohingya Muslims.
Yeah, May, tell us more a bit about the reaction from the people in Myanmar. We know they're watching the proceedings in The Hague quite closely.
The reason why I'm standing here right in the downtown and the heart of Yangon is because there were screens, and as you can see right now, screens erected behind me. They've all gone blank simply because the proceedings have ended and a lot of people have pretty much scattered, or they're just milling around for recreational purposes. But about 3 screens were erected here. They were actually showing it blow by blow in terms of the hearings that were going on. In fact, parts of the proceedings were actually being translated into the Burmese language to allow the people here to understand. It's not easy to follow through with it, given the fact there's a lot of legal language being used, and all of the speakers and the lawyers spoke in English, including Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi herself. But a lot of people here pretty much showed support for her, and this is just part of the many previous days as well as weeks, different parts of the countries that have done the same in terms of having rally walks as well as support rallies to come around to not just to show support for her, throwing up banners to say that we stand with Aung San Suu Kyi, but also holding prayer sessions to reach out and hopefully try to give her a little bit of a good luck. You must also remember the fact here is a lot of the Myanmar citizens do tend to agree with Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi, believing that what she's doing for the country is really for the best of this nation and also for the best of the people. And in this one particular issue, you can just imagine this is one subject that has really galvanized the entire population, including the likes of the military, the opposition parties, as well as the ruling government. So all of them seem to come and speak with one voice to fight against what they call terrorism and also to try and keep out illegal immigrants in this country.
All right, May, thanks for that. May Wong speaking to us from Yangon.